leaving the next day, so I hurried up and packed everything that I could. When we got to the Detroit Metropolitan Airport, my mother's sister Pat was waiting for us to get off the plane. When we were in the airport, we saw my Aunt Pat waiting for us. I just dropped my bags and ran over to her to give her a big hug. On the way home, my Aunt Pat told us what she had in mind for us to do while we stayed with Aunt Pat and her family. She said the most exciting thing to do is to see the Montag Inn. I had asked her what it was, and she told me that it was an old house where people from anywhere could stay the night. My Aunt Pat told my mother and I that the home had about 15 bedrooms. I was so excited that I could finally see a beautiful home like that. I asked her when we could go see it, and she did the following day because we had to go back to her house so we could rest and get something to eat. After we had something to eat, I went to bed because I thought that the night would go faster, but it took me a while to fall asleep because I was so excited. Then the day came to visit the Montag Inn. When we got there, I was astonished at such a wonderful home it was. I couldn't imagine anything bigger. When we walked in the doors, I could feel a chill running up my spine. Mr. and Mrs. Kinney gave us a tour of the home and told us how her and her husband and friends did most of the remodeling themselves. They told us about Mr. Montag and his two children. They showed us all the bedrooms and the outside by the herb garden. It was great. After the tour was over, Mr. and Mrs. Kinney told us how nice of a pleasure it was to show us around. We thanked her, and as we were going out the door, my Aunt Pat remembered that she had locked her keys in her car. So my aunt had to call her house and have her son Todd bring out an extra pair. While we waited, Mr. and Miss Kinney asked us to stay for lunch. So we did. The lunch was really too fancy for me though. I just assumed stick with my two favorites, Old Town Drive-In and McDonald's. Todd had arrived just as we finished eating. We thanked her again and left. When my mother and I left for Florida, I said to myself that someday I would start a Montag Inn where I live. In fulfillment of our plans and her project, Wendy writes about the Montag Inn and her family. And she does something else. She seems to issue another curricular invitation to herself. With W13, she appears to have concluded the text she was writing during the 1987-88 academic year and to have introduced a new one that does not focus on the past, one that looks to the future. I smiled when I first read this last piece of writing Wendy composed for the course we had constructed together, and I smile again as I read it now. Perhaps I do so because she begins the piece by placing herself in Florida, a place I know she likes because she told me so in one.